North Korea has been turned upside down. Suddenly, a person disappeared. In Saint Petersburg, Russia, Russian media rushed to publish articles. North Korean diplomat missing. Details such as his height, weight, and the color of the clothes he was wearing were all specified, and even the license plate. Number of the car he was driving was made public. The North Korean authorities filed a missing person report with the Russian police, and an order was issued in Pyongyang to bring him back immediately. However, that missing person was me. I was one of the top elites in North Korea. I personally selected and imported the Benz that Kim Jong-un rides in. No matter how tight the sanctions against North Korea were, they were useless. Buying a car in someone else's name, laundering the ownership from country to country, and eventually bringing it into Pyongyang. That was my job, without the international community noticing at all. In Pyongyang, there is a special road that only the Kim family can use, and I personally prepared the cars that drive on that road. In Russia, I managed over 70 North Korean companies and was in a position that no one could easily touch. So why did I end up being chased? One day, out of the blue, a summons arrived. There was no reason. Those who have endured for a long time understand this feeling when they are simply told to return to the north immediately. I secretly found out through acquaintances that the fact there is no reason is even scarier. A distant relative was caught by the security department for selling prohibited items. I had never met that person. Yet the crime was connected to me. That's what the guilt by association means. In North Korea, whether or not you are related by blood, if you are suspected, it's over. Moreover, the head of the security department came all the way to Russia and insisted that I take my son, who couldn't even walk due to an injury, and go north immediately. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I had lived my whole life for the party, and I realized that this was all the reward for my loyalty. I made a resolution that day. I will share this story from now on, so that my son can have a different life. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and like it. Your interest gives us the power to continue sharing these stories with the world. Honestly, my heart raced when I first took on that job, choosing the car that comrade Kim will ride in with my own hands. At that time, I only thought about how great an honor it was. Not many people in North Korea know this name in the field of trade. You can think of it as the elite unit of the Kim family. It was a unit responsible for the security of the leader, and the place that managed the vehicles used by that unit was where I was stationed. So, to put it simply, I was in charge of Kim Jong-un's personal vehicles. Would you like to hear how things work? First, instructions will be given to the Mingyu branches, located in China and various overseas locations. Upload all the information on the latest Benz models. I won't even ask about the price, just the best one. When the latest materials are uploaded, they will be handed over to the security agency, and once the agency selects them, the actual work will begin. Just from what I imported from Russia, there were 9 vehicles, including a Mercedes sedan, vehicles for the security team, and vans like the Carnival. Each of those 9 vehicles costs hundreds of millions. But how does this get into Pyongyang? This is where the real story begins. It absolutely cannot be done legally. Imports of luxury goods are blocked due to sanctions against North Korea. So we use foreigners. We buy a Mercedes under a Dutch name. I change the name. While sending it to the UK, it goes from the UK to Singapore, from Singapore to Macau, from Macau to Japan, and then through Busan to Vladivostok. It's like money laundering. It's about washing the car. Even the Mercedes headquarters didn't know. When the U.S. pressured the Mercedes headquarters about potential violations of North Korean sanctions, the headquarters asked all its global branches, and everyone said they had never sold anything, which is understandable. Since it was laundered through several countries under foreign names, it looks just like a regular transaction, no matter where you cut it off. The car that came all the way to Vladivostok is transported in a direct flight to Pyongyang. When you arrive in Pyongyang, the military officers from the Guard Command will come out to receive the car. They don't even conduct an X-ray inspection. You just pick it up right there and drive on Highway 123. I don't think anyone knows this road. It's a private road that only the Kim family can use. I also rode along with the officers once, and there were no restrictions. There were no signals, and the road just stretches on continuously. The car drives along that road all the way to the leader's residence. The car I chose, the car I washed, is driving down that road. At that time, I was really proud of it. My father's role was significant in my reaching this point. My father was originally a miner, working in the coal mines of South Hwanghae Province. He was someone who endured day by day while inhaling coal dust, but after enlisting in the military, he achieved great accomplishments during his service and was awarded the title of Republic Hero. In North Korea, being a republic, hero means that the entire family's circumstances change. You are gaining the party's trust entirely. Moreover, at the end of the 1990s, Chairman Chung Ju-young of Hyundai invested in North Korea and brought in construction equipment, and the officer in charge of the unit that received that equipment was my father. The Ryukyung Chung Ju-young Gymnasium, that building was constructed at that time. So I was a child born into a family loyal to the party. I enlisted in the military at 17, and after my discharge, I immediately entered the Department of Economic Trade at Pyongyang. University of People's Economy. There were no selection exams, because I was marked as a talent managed by the party. After graduating, I was assigned to the Department of External Economic Affairs, and from there I came back to the Trade Division. I never doubted that I would reach the position, responsible for the Kim family's goods. This is my life, and I believed this was the right path. Even while washing the Benz and letting it in, I never once thought that it was the wrong thing to do. It's for receiving, so what could possibly be wrong? At that time, I thought that way. In 2007, I was dispatched to Russia. Saint Petersburg is the second largest city in Russia. I became the deputy representative of the Ministry of Economic Trade there. In simple terms, it was a key position for North Korean economic diplomats in Russia. I had the authority to manage North Korean companies in that area, oversee foreign currency earnings, and grant or deny permits to companies looking to enter North Korea. There were 40 North Korean company branches only in the Russian Far East and a total of 70 to 80 across Russia. Construction, labor, clothing, and trade were all under my jurisdiction. Of course, a lot of money circulated. North Korean economic diplomats must contribute foreign currency to their home country every year. It's between $40,000 to $100,000 per person, which is over 50 million to more than 100 million won. To fill this official diplomatic work alone is not enough. We need to do something more. I did it too. In Russia, there is a beer called Baltica. It's a beer that Russian workers enjoy a lot. And North Korean workers also get used to this beer while staying in Russia. Then, when they return to North Korea, they miss that taste. And that's what I aimed for. We sign a contract with a Chinese person, send it to Dalian by container, and then hand it over to a North Korean person there. Since diplomats can't engage in business directly, they involve a foreigner in between. It's not much different from the way we used to wash Benzes. Interestingly, this Baltica beer is actually the original of Daedonggang beer. In 2001, Kim Jong-il visited Russia, toured the Baltica brewery, and decided that we should create a similar taste, which led to the establishment of the Daedonggang brewery the following year. So for North Koreans, Baltica beer is like the father of Daedonggang beer. Life in Russia appeared glamorous on the surface. Business owners who bring in king crabs to serve. A bottle of Chivas Regal costs $100, but if there's any left, it's thrown in the sink. The Daedonggang Hotel karaoke room has triple soundproofing, so no sound escaped. They had money, power, and lacked nothing. But there was just one thing missing. The day before departure, the wife of Minister Yoon Jong-ho visited our home. She handed a note to my wife and told her to open it when she arrives in Russia. I thought it was a shopping list. I figured it was asking me to buy something in Russia. But when I arrived in Russia and opened it, there were 3 website addresses written down. I found out that DramaNet and similar sites were places where you could watch Korean dramas for free. At first, I just brushed it off. I wasn't the type of person who would watch that kind of thing, but the drama that my wife casually turned on started to catch my eye. I'm getting curious about the next episode of The Chaser and the moon embracing the sun. In the end, I ended up watching it too. That was the beginning. At first, it was just a drama. I thought I was watching it because it was interesting, even though I know how cautious the North Korean authorities are. I thought it would be okay to take a look since I'm overseas. But while watching the drama, something keeps catching my eye. Those people go anywhere, say anything, and eat whatever they want, day or night, with convenience stores open and supermarkets overflowing with goods. It's just an ordinary daily life, but I found it unfamiliar. I had to use Google a lot for work. As a diplomat, I had to watch news from various countries, and since Naver is a Korean site, I searched for Yonhap News on Google to avoid leaving a trace. At first, I was just looking at it for information gathering, but at some point, I just started reading it. Are you asking if I feel betrayed about what's happening in Korea and how the world views North Korea? Honestly, I've heard a little bit, but there was something even heavier than that. I was worried about my son. There is such a system in North Korea. Even if a diplomat dispatched overseas takes their child with them, the child must be sent back to Pyongyang once they turn 7. It means that they must attend elementary school in North Korea. There is Kim Il-sung's instruction that children should receive education in North Korea during the formative years of their worldview. So, a child who was breathing free air abroad has to enter Pyongyang the moment they turn 7. It's no different from being a hostage. My daughter also went in like that. I can't express how much it hurt when my wife took him in herself. Still, at that time, I accepted it as something that couldn't be helped. However, my son was different. I was a child who grew up in Russia and knew what freedom was. I watched Korean dramas, used the internet, and played soccer with my friends. As I grew up, the thought of sending that child to Pyongyang increasingly weighed on my mind. So in 2012 or 2013, I devised a plan to enter Pyongyang under the pretext of a business trip and bring my son out. It was about changing my son's birth year. If the grade doesn't match, he could stay in Russia longer. I bribed the police officer in charge of resident registration with $100. and changed my birth year. Moreover, the director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was someone I knew well from my time in Saint Petersburg, so I gave him another nudge and got the paperwork processed quickly. What usually takes a few weeks was completed in just 5 days. I even created a medical certificate stating that I have heart disease and submitted it to the party officials. They said I need parental care. That's how I brought my son to Russia. At that time, I thought that was enough. I still believed that if I could hold on here, my son would be able to live freely. That belief was shattered after the summons came in. June 2016. A telegram has arrived. It was a message telling me to return to North Korea immediately. There was no reason given. I just stood there blankly. After receiving that telegram, that simply said to come back. If there's a reason written down, it's actually less scary, because at least there's room for some explanation. But the fact that there is no reason could mean that a conclusion has already been reached. I secretly contacted acquaintances who are still in Pyongyang. I asked them to find out what on earth is going on. A few days later, I received news. After hearing it, I felt a sense of disorientation. It was my aunt. To be precise, she is my uncle's wife, someone I am not even related to by blood, but she was caught on the spot by the security department while selling Bibles. I received a 10-year sentence and went to prison, and my entire family was deported, and that crime was connected to me as well. It's collective punishment. I have never even met that person. I have never had a conversation with them either. However, the country of North Korea holds even diplomats working abroad accountable for the reason that a distant relative sold a Bible. Your family has no loyalty now. You should take responsibility. Too, that's the principle of collective punishment. I later thought about this as well. My aunt might have mentioned my name to protect someone else during the investigation. Since I am someone who travels freely abroad, it could be that I was used as a card to wrap up the incident. But either way, it was a bolt from the blue for me. However, there was a real decisive blow that came separately. Not long after the summons arrived, the head of the Overseas Counterintelligence Department of the Ministry of National Defense came directly to Russia. Usually, they send agents to monitor North Koreans who are abroad, but this time the manager came in person. He even came all the way to Saint Petersburg and said this. Since he came all this way, he suggested that the whole family go back to North Korea together, but I refused. My son was in a situation where he couldn't even walk properly because he injured his leg while playing soccer. I said it didn't make sense to drag that child onto a train and then onto a plane. I asked if it was right to forcefully drag a limping child in front of foreign diplomats who were all watching. The head of the security department said that was just an excuse. I fought fiercely at that moment, saying it was a refusal of the party's directive. I did not back down even a step. In the end, the manager went down first. That night, I sat for a long time. I lived my whole life for the party. My father said so, and I did too. A loyal family, a trustworthy person. That was me. However, a distant relative is asking us to come north, even dragging along a child with a hurt leg just because he sold a Bible. I realized this was the price of loyalty. I saw my son's face. The child sitting on the sofa with a cast on his leg was 11 years old. What happens if you take a child who grew up playing with friends in Russia, playing soccer and watching YouTube, into Pyongyang in the youth organization, political education, and labor mobilization? You can't even see what you want to see or say what you want to say. And you have to grow up like that. And you have to go to the military. I didn't like that at first. My son came before the party. I decided to defect from North Korea. The first thing I thought of was my wife. My wife's family is even more loyal than ours. All of her family members are executives, and they have a deep-rooted belief in the party. I knew that if I suggested defecting, they would never follow me. So I didn't mention anything about my aunt first. If I brought that up, it would mean our family has become a reactionary family, and I thought my wife would be even more shocked. I just spoke directly. I will no longer be involved in politics and will go into exile. I'm taking my son with me. My wife said she wouldn't come, so will you follow or not? I said it again. As a parent, I argued for a long time, asking my wife to sacrifice just once for our son's future. In the end, my wife agreed. Next was the passport. This is why North Korean diplomats have difficulty defecting. They keep the passports at the embassy, so to defect, you first need to get your passport, which is not easy, but I was different. Our office was 800 kilometers away from the embassy. It was a completely independent institution, and since it was established directly by Kim Jong-il, we did not receive any instructions from the embassy, so I personally had the passport. I have built connections while living in Russia for 9 years, including my family's passports. I got along like brothers with a prosecutor who was the right-hand man of the powerful figures in the Russian prosecutor's office. If the security agency tries to do something in Russia, my people could just block it. What remained was the route to Korea. Once I made up my mind, my head became clearer. If emotions take over, mistakes happen. I learned how to remain calm and act in any situation while living as a diplomat in Russia for 9 years. The same goes for defecting from North Korea. Emotions come later. Right now, we need to take action. The first thing I needed was the Korean consulate. The problem was how to make contact. I couldn't just go there without a plan, and I didn't know the phone number either, if by any chance the security department hears about the contact process. It's all over that day. One day, while driving, I noticed a car in front of me. The moment I saw the license plate, I recognized it. As someone who has lived as a diplomat in Saint Petersburg for a long time, I can tell just by looking at the license plate of a diplomatic vehicle which country and what level of diplomat it belongs to. I felt my heart sink as I followed the car behind. From the consulate's perspective, it must have been terrifying to suddenly have a North Korean diplomatic vehicle following closely, so they increased their speed. I also increased my speed accordingly. I crossed the signal, turned into an alley, and eventually blocked the consulate car right in front of the Russian car. I got out of the car and knocked on the window. The face of the consulate staff inside had turned pale. I spoke through the window. I want to seek asylum. The employee kept their mouth shut when I asked for help. After a while, they only said one thing. They said they couldn't say anything that would violate the national security law, and I didn't say anything more. I turned around. I realized that staying there any longer would be useless. From the perspective of the consulate staff, it must have been quite shocking when a North Korean diplomat suddenly blocked their car and requested asylum. Moreover, they probably also thought about the possibility that this could be a trap from North Korea. After returning home, I took out the Diplomatic Corps guidebook. This is a booklet containing the contact information of diplomatic missions from various countries in Saint Petersburg. I opened the page for the Korean consulate. There was a phone number. My hands were shaking a little. If I make this call, I won't be able to come back. I spoke to the employee who answered the phone. I am the deputy representative of the North Korean Ministry of Economic Trade, and I want to defect to South Korea with my family. The employee asked me to wait for a moment. It seemed like they were checking something. I was holding the receiver and standing still. The ticking of the clock was particularly loud. A moment later, the phone rang again. I was asked if I could go to the airport. I said I could go. I bought a plane ticket to Minsk and was advised to go only as far as Ukraine. From there, the Korean side said they would take care of it. I called for my wife. After hanging up the phone, I'm going today. I'm getting ready now. My wife packed the bags. I didn't know how much I could pack. If you pack too much, it stands out. And if you pack too little, it can be a problem later. I had to cram 9 years of life in Russia into a few bags. My wife packed our things without saying a word. I couldn't bear to look at her expression. The son's leg has not fully healed yet. The cast has been removed, but he struggles when walking for a long time. I only told the child that we are going on a trip. I asked where they were going, and they said they were going to a good place. The child did not ask any further questions. I loaded the luggage into the car, and we set off towards the airport. We stopped the car at the Park Inn Hotel parking lot. Driving a car with a North Korean diplomatic license plate to the airport is too conspicuous. If the license plate is captured by the airport CCTV, it will be tracked later. I took all the luggage out of the car. I called a taxi. The article only carried the burden, without knowing the reason. As I entered the airport, I thought of only one thing. I have 3 passports from our family in my hands. This is a diplomatic passport. As long as we have this passport, no one can stop us. Russian police, airport staff, and the security service do not apply local laws to diplomats, according to the Vienna Convention. However, knowing something in your head and actually standing in front of the counter are 2 different things. I stood in front of the check-in counter. The employee received the passport and looked at it. I held my breath. The expression of the Russian airport staff, looking at the North Korean diplomatic passport, seemed to stiffen a bit. Or maybe I just looked that way. Because I was too nervous, the employee entered something into the computer. A few seconds felt like several minutes. The boarding pass has been issued. I gave a wink to my wife. My wife nodded briefly. The son received the boarding pass and looked at it curiously. I passed through the security checkpoint. I walked to the gate. I have never looked back. I felt like I shouldn't look back. Thinking about what I left behind makes it hard to move my feet, so I sat in the waiting area in front of the gate. My son said he was hungry. I bought sandwiches from a nearby convenience store. The 3 of us sat side by side and ate the sandwiches. At Saint Petersburg Airport, I had a sandwich on the night I defected. It's quite strange when I think about it now. The boarding announcement has been made. On July 3rd, 2016, the plane took off. Saint Petersburg faded away outside the window. The city, where I lived for 9 years, became smaller and smaller. I kept looking out the window until the end, until it completely disappears. I landed at Minsk Airport. It's Belarus, a country close to Russia, so I was a bit nervous at first. But since we have already left Russia, the Ministry of Defense must act through diplomatic channels. It takes time. We just need to move faster. I took a flight from Minsk to Kyiv, Ukraine. The moment I landed at Kyiv Airport, someone from the Korean consulate was waiting for me. It was a face I had never seen before, but the moment I saw it, I felt something lift. I thought it was finally done. The consulate provided guidance on the next route. There are several layovers from Kyiv to Hamburg, and then to Korea. And there are reasons for each. It's very noticeable. When you fly directly to Seoul, it makes tracking difficult by passing through several countries. On the flight from Kyiv to Hamburg, my wife cried for the first time. I cried silently. I didn't say anything next to her. I had nothing to say. I realized that my wife was thinking about the family we left behind in the north. Parents, siblings, and people I don't know when I'll see again. I felt the same way. But you shouldn't think about that right now. Right now, we need to focus on what's ahead. The son held his mother's hand, but didn't say anything. He was just holding her hand. I wonder if the 11-year-old understood the situation, or if he just held her hand because she was crying. Anyway, it seemed that his hand calmed his wife a little. We have arrived in Hamburg. We waited for our transfer at the airport. It took a few hours. I sat in the airport chair and did nothing. I didn't even look at my phone. I was just blankly staring. And 9 years were passing by from the day my father received the title of Hero of the Republic. The day I entered Pyongyang University of Economics. The day we imported our first Benz. And the day he was assigned to Russia. All of that was now behind me. The flight to Korea was called. As I boarded, I glanced at my boarding pass once. The destination was marked as Incheon. Since childhood, I was taught that Incheon is enemy territory. Yet I am flying there now. It felt strange rather than being afraid. It was just odd. As the airplane got closer to Incheon, lights started to appear outside the window. It was completely bright even though it was night. The entire city was shining. Pyongyang has night views too, but this was on a different level. Every corner was lit up. My son pressed his face against the window and looked outside. Wow, I said. Briefly. I arrived at Incheon Airport on July 5, 2016. It had been 2 days since I left Russia. I took flights to Minsk, Kyiv, Hamburg, and Incheon 4 times. For a North Korean diplomat to defect, it usually takes months. But I had my passport in hand, and a clear route. I just took a flight. As I stepped on Korean soil, I thought of just one thing. I'm glad to be here. While we were flying to Minsk, chaos was unfolding in Russia. A North Korean diplomat's family has gone missing in Saint Petersburg. Initially, it was treated as a disappearance. Yoon Jong-ho, the Minister of Foreign Affairs who worked with us, has been reported missing to the Russian police. Russian media picked it up and wrote articles about it. He was 175 centimeters tall, wearing black pants, a sky blue shirt, black shoes, and a badge with Kim Jong-un's portrait. I used a Volkswagen Polo with diplomatic license plates. Detailed descriptions of the appearance have been fully disclosed. An order has been issued in Pyongyang to bring them immediately. I heard that Kim Jong-un gave the order directly. It wasn't a command to catch them, but rather a request to bring them. The difference is subtle. Catch implies treating them as criminals, while bring leaves the possibility open. It must have been hard for them to believe that someone who was as loyal to the party as I was ended up like this. I said I wouldn't go. As I learned in North Korea, according to the Yucha ideology, I declared that I would live as the master of my own fate. My destiny is something I decide for myself, and that's something North Korea taught me. Later, after seeing the article about the disappearance, I personally texted that reporter. Do you want to know what I said? I asked why they were asking me something when they already knew. I was in Seoul. There was no reply. They couldn't even imagine that. I went to Korea. Having lived so faithfully, I never even thought about defection. I just thought that maybe there was an accident somewhere, or I was kidnapped. In fact, that made my escape easier, in some ways. The same reason applies to the fact that the surveillance by the security service was lax while I was in Russia. Who would suspect a loyal person like me would defect? No one did. South Korea felt unfamiliar. It was fascinating that there were convenience stores open 24 hours. And it was also surprising that no one said anything when I walked around alone at night. It was also surprising that North Korean news was just available on the internet. In Russia, I secretly searched for Yonhap News on Google. But here you can just search for it. I received settlement education at Hanawon and gradually became accustomed to life in Korea. Because my way of speaking was different, people often asked me where I was from at first. The taste of the food was also different, but in the end, the fact that they are people who use the same words and write the same letters was strangely comforting. My wife has been struggling for a long time. It's not completely resolved even now. I hear that thoughts of the family left behind in the North never leave their mind. It's true that I forced the choice, and that weight still remains on my wife. I don't have much to say. For 9 years I have not shown my face, except to tell you to look after your son. I quietly listened from the back. Even at North Korean human rights events, there are still people in Russia who know my name, and the North Korean authorities probably haven't forgotten me either. I just lived quietly. My son has grown up. I graduated from high school in Korea and entered pharmacy school. It feels like just yesterday that I held the hand of a child who had hurt their leg and got on a plane, but now I have become a pharmacy student. Sometimes I think about this. What would have happened if I had entered North Korea? As the head of the security department said back then, that child would probably be in the military now. One day I stopped while watching the news. It was a video of North Korean soldiers captured on the Ukrainian front. They had young faces. My son is about the same age, and I was watching that video for quite a while. If our son had been in North Korea, he would have been one of those kids, the children who were just mobilized and sent off to fight in a foreign war, without even knowing why moved me. I had been quiet for 9 years, but I felt it was time to raise my voice. So we created an organization called Future Korea Cooperation. What we are currently doing is bringing North Korean soldiers captured on the Ukrainian front back to Korea. I believe that countries that uphold liberal democracy and understand the value of human rights must work together. Those children didn't make a choice either. They just happened to be born in North Korea. Just like me, I wasn't in that position by choice either. My father received the title of Hero of the Republic, which put me on the elite path, and I just lived on that. I was just lucky. I had a passport in my hand, connections in Russia, and my son, who had injured his leg, made me determined. Those pieces fell into place, allowing us to come this far. I hope that the children who are captured will one day have the opportunity to make a choice. That's what I want to talk about, here and now. If this video was helpful, please subscribe and like it. Your interest gives us the strength to continue sharing these voices.